Welcome to episode 2 of Deconstructing Darkness. If you forgot, I'm your host. It's been almost a year since I posted the first episode. My name's River Pitlick, and this is a podcast that's dedicated to helping break down perceivingly scary things in spirituality, trauma, endings, and new beginnings. I have that memorized by now. I am not a fan of the intros. The intros are not fun. The production side of this, not very fun. Talking to you guys, sitting here and speaking into a mic and being able to watch that back, great. Editing, not very fun. But you know what? I'm literally sitting here in my pajamas. If you haven't noticed, I'm wearing sweatpants in my kitchen because I can't be bothered. I just need to do these podcasts and I can't care about all of the details because it's just not fun. I want to focus on what's fun for me, so I do it. Positive reward, right? That's how it works. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with the episode 2. I want to cover some pretty serious things that I was not able to cover in the first episode, but a couple of disclaimers. I will make bits. Okay, I will laugh about everything I'm talking about to you guys, no matter how traumatizing it is. So you have permission to laugh with me. Don't laugh at me. Don't laugh at this stuff. It's horrible, wicked shit. But you can laugh with me because some of it is so ironic. Like, how is this, any of this real and happening? And it feels like a dream. And I wish it was. Sometimes I do wish it was. Trigger warning. I will be discussing some pretty explicit, graphic, sexually deviant content. I don't know what words are going to get me flagged, so we're not going to worry about it. The people that need to see this will see this. But basically, over the last year since I posted the last video, I came out publicly as a survivor of ritualistic or satanic sexual abuse. And what is that, right? That's so obscure. And you Google it, and it doesn't really have a lot that it helps you with in regards to the detail of one's experience, which I think is why so many survivors share their survivor experience. I posted on Substack my Mormon survivor story, my Mormon ritual abuse survivor story, I think is what it's called. And I want to go over it with you guys. I want to read it over it again and kind of clarify some things. I've learned a lot since I've posted it. I've learned a lot. I've healed a lot. I've moved through a lot. I'm in a much different place than I was when I released that. I had only met one other survivor of ritual abuse, and there was kind of this emphasis on needing to share details to be believed. And I just don't want to do that. I will have guests on and I will hold space for them in whatever form they want to, be held in and shared in and spoken about. But I don't want to come on here and be like, oh, the other day I unrepressed this really traumatic memory of me doing this in ceremony. I I don't want to be salacious. I feel like sometimes giving details like that adds an aspect of true crime to it. And also it makes people really angry, rightfully so. We should be fired up. We should be pissed that this type of stuff is happening. But I think with righteous anger comes a righteous responsibility. You have to be really level-headed and clear. And especially in regards to wanting to get justice and punishment and understanding that really more than anything, we need to focus on healing. At least that's what I've had to do. I've had to really shift my basis for motivation from justice to just healing. And that's really hard to do because these people are still out there doing this type of stuff. And I'm like a pretty young survivor. There's only another survivor that I've met that's younger than me, only by a couple of years. And most of the people that have remembered that they went through satanic abuse remember, 30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I'm 29. I'm not even 30 yet. So the people that I'm remembering are still very much active in society, very much active in their families, very much active in their communities. And I don't really feel like coming on here and blowing it all up right now, especially where I don't have the security. I don't have protection. I don't have, all of these things that you would need to have to actually pursue justice, which how are you supposed to pursue justice when they're the ones that, built and are running the system, the infrastructure of justice, right? We know this in Utah. It's incredibly corrupt here. We can look at the David Hamblin case and the judges that have thrown it out. We can look at the Tremonton fire chief and the Tremonton judge where they were exchanging child imagery and discussing horrific things between each other. They were also in a sexual relationship, I guess. I don't know. But it gets weird. It gets really weird. And they're the ones that are calling the shots in the infrastructure of our government and our systems. So I don't trust it. I don't feel like it's at a place right now where survivors could even really get justice. I think that the best justice will come in me healing, because I'm understanding now a lot more that it's not that people are scared of me. I think for a really long time I had a hard time understanding why I kept getting dropped in this, which it's a really serious, hard, heavy thing to talk about. And not a lot of people are going to know what the heck to say. And I'm also super hypersensitive to what people are saying. Not anymore. I've worked through a lot of this because I have support now, thank goodness. But I think that the biggest, most important thing that survivors can do, because we went through something that was so dark and so hard to kind of unravel, is as we heal ourselves, as we bring light to our internal darkness, as we sit with these things, as we unrepress these memories, as we do breath work and we hold space and somatic healing, go to therapy and whatever you use, whether it's, I have noticed that a lot of survivors have a big emphasis on Jesus. I personally have not worked with Jesus. I mean, I have worked with Jesus in a non-Christian sense, but I find that my higher self and, you know, things like that tend to be a little bit more powerful for me. So I don't use Jesus as a framework. I know a lot of other survivors do. I think to each their own. But while we heal these things, we're going to be able to show people what we experienced, right? So survivors healing themselves and bringing light to their darkness gives us the ability to articulate, to explain, to say out loud what happened to us without it coming from a place of such intense trigger, without it coming from a place of, you know, we're worried we're going to die, we're in suicide programming, the whole world's blowing up. Because what is somebody on the outside of that going to be able to do to help us? Like, unfortunately, I wish that people knew how to respond to people in these really serious traumatic situations well. I think some people do, but the vast majority of people don't. And so when we're trying to convey this on like a public scale, in a platform sense, it becomes a lot more complicated because we can't be so I'm going to be emotional about it, but I can't be so emotional that I can't articulate the dark for you guys. I can't bring light to my darkness so you guys can see it and understand what's really going on and what really happened to me without me healing that first. I have to be able to have that heal to bring it and present it so the collective can see what's happening. So that's really where my motive lies. I'm not coming in here with like pitchforks and knives trying to out anybody or drop names. And I know that that's what some people really want to happen. I just not going to play to that agenda until I feel like I'm in a safe enough place with enough support behind me to be able to, if that's ever something that is on the table. Without giving you too much background, I just kind of rambled. I don't know where everybody's like guide post is for where they're at on unraveling these journeys of satanic ritual abuse or these types of groups. These types of groups exist all over. We know this. We're seeing this in the Diddy trial. We saw Epstein. There's tons of these groups in the governments. And people will be like, oh, Satanists are running the world and all of these different things. And like, I think like overtly it can be looked at and related to Satanism. But I think that there's a lot more at play than this ideology of Christianity in abuse. And in satanic abuse specifically, I think it's kind of used as like a shield and a protection to keep people from actually being held accountable sometimes. For this episode, since I don't really know where everybody's coming at it from a background point of view, I think I literally just want to read my survivor story with you guys and go through it and talk about things that I've learned, things that I've healed from, ways that I've changed. Because I had a friend come over the other day and I hadn't talked to her in 8 years. And she was like, dude, I saw your survivor story. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what'd you think? And she said, I don't know. I couldn't read the whole thing. And I appreciated the honesty. I super appreciated the honesty, but I was like, no, that's valid. And so I'm going to read it with you guys. I'm going to add in bits. I'm going to make jokes. We're going to make it light. It's not going to be so serious because I'm alive and I'm fine. And I can discuss this stuff without it being completely like revolting to my system. So anyway, without further ado, triggering content, warning. I have it pulled up. If you want to read it, it's literally on Substack. It doesn't come up when you Google it. I don't know why. But if you go to my name, River Pitlick, it's on my profile. So we start out by saying, my name is River Pitlick, and between the ages of 2 to 5 years old, I was ritualistically abused within the Latter-day Saint, Mormon church. 2 years ago, at the age of 27, I started uncovering and remembering what happened to me. There are many reasons why survivors forget or repress what happened to them. As I prepare to come forward with my story, my mind has been flooded with why I forgot in the first place and some tactics used to make sure I never spoke of these things again. Okay, so first of all, between the ages of 2 to 5 years old. Wish I could say it was just those. Wish I could say it stopped at 2 to 5. It's so not funny, but like this is what's so crazy about it is like you start to remember chunks and then it's like a ball of yarn. It just starts unraveling and everything kind of starts coming out. I'm still in the thick of like unrepressing things and putting together pieces of what happened to me, but I now know that it was a lot later in my life that Satanists aren't going to work that hard to split and program a child's brain to not use them for most of their lives, that they have access to them. It's not funny, but it's like logical. They're not going to do all that and just like drop you. I have had memories of like being pulled out of sleepovers in people's houses that I was staying at, and being trafficked to other different individuals later on in my life. So basically, like, yeah, well, I guess we'll get into it. It's like sex trafficking. It's like satanic child sex trafficking. So they like it. We'll get into it. We'll just keep going. Says the first year of unrepressing memories almost solely focused on the sexual abuse and grooming that took place with my father. The reality I was living in before September of 2022 was one that I will never be able to go back to again. Growing up in the LDS faith, there's a huge emphasis on family. And while most of my immediate family members were no longer active or believing members of the LDS Church, the core principle of family and its importance held strong. For years prior, I was employed by my dad, working on and off alongside him and my brothers in the family trade. Along with my dad being my employer, he was also one of my best friends and someone I considered myself deeply lucky to have as a father. I included these details as you can get an idea of how wildly blindsided I was by these memories. This is true. This is like 100% true. If you knew me before I remembered these things, you knew that I was very close with my father. I had a very good relationship with my father. I look back now and I'm like, it was a very Freudian relationship. It was a very like groomy, abuser, abused relationship. And I had like Stockholm syndrome to the max. Like, I was like, oh, my dad is the best. I love my dad. He's amazing. And like, not that people didn't like my dad in my family, but he definitely wasn't like the popular one, right? Like everybody in my family had expressed discomfort or disdain for my father. I felt like I was really the only one that was like, I have a really close relationship with him and you just don't understand him and blah, 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 blah. So when all of this happened and I started unrepressing memories of just him sexually abusing me, I thought he'd go to therapy with me. I genuinely thought that I would confront him because we had been doing like healing spiritual work together for years beforehand to this. I had started working for him in 2020 and we would have these really crazy, really long spiritual conversations. I used to host new and full moon ceremonies and he would come and co-host them with me. He was really into like Wim Hof and ice baths and the whole like woo-woo spirituality, mental health movement that I feel like we see today. He is so a lot of people thought, and I did think, that he was like really woke and really spiritual. And I really did truly believe that he would want to work this out with me. Now looking back, I understand that like if you confess to one thing and I started unrepressing other things, how do you like cut that off? And when do you say it's real and when do you say it's not? And it gets super sticky. But at the time I was like, it was just the memories of him abusing me and I thought we would work through this. So after I had unrepressed these things, and a little bit about the unrepression, basically, I had been doing lots of different types of like somatic healing and body processing work for years prior to that. And we'll get into that in this article. But I had felt something coming up in my body for like probably a week. I don't know if any of you guys do body work, but like sometimes you can feel it first and then you can name it, but it takes a minute. You have to like be like, okay, what shape is this discomfort? What color is this? What is it, pokey? Is it round? What are the edges like? Like you have to kind of work with the emotion before you can really like name it. And so I had been trying to do that and it would not come out. I have a video of me in the backseat of my car being like, what is happening? I don't know what's trying to come out. And I went home and I was with somebody at the time who I'm no longer in a relationship with, but we still are really close and good friends, which is great. And she was able to hold space for me. And as soon as she like held space for my body, all of a sudden I had a part of me, it felt like 4-year-old me, come to me. She was like, I need to show you some stuff. And she took me, it was like I don't know if you guys meditate and you like see things in your meditations with your like third eye or whatever we're imagining or seeing. And she took me to this place, and there was like a room full of doors, just like lined all the way down the hallway. And she opened the very first door. She wouldn't even open it all the way, and she just cracked it. And I looked in, and then all of a sudden, as I looked in, I was like sucked into my 4-year-old body, and I was reliving the abuse that my dad did to me when I was really, really little. Some of the conditioning, and I was like, I was in it, and I came out of it, and my body went into probably one of the worst PTSD attacks that I've ever had. And I was like, I was reliving it. I had never experienced, because I had PTSD. I'd been diagnosed with it prior. I'd had conscious sexual assaults happen to me when I was 18 and 19, and I had understood the trauma from those things and how my body kind of processed it and the adrenaline state that I would go into. But I had never fully experienced like truly reliving. Like I would go into a fight or flight state and know my adrenaline was up because I would feel unsafe, but truly reliving to the point of like feeling the sensations in my body, a living hell, a living hell. I could not, and it was so visceral and so real, and I was so confused. I was so like, there's no way that this happened. I don't want this to be happening. I'm crazy. Like maybe it was the neighbor, and I just kept like trying to suss out anything else. And I went to bed that night, and then I started having like really horrific nightmares of being abused by my dad. And every single time it was in my parents' bedroom, every single time, except for a couple of like traveling occasions, but it was always in my parents' room. And I couldn't understand. Like I kept trying to figure out, like maybe it was the neighbor, maybe the face was transposed, maybe whoever was hurting me, I transposed my dad's face onto their face. I was doing everything I could in my power to say that I was remembering this wrong, that this wasn't really what happened. And from there, I kind of like moved forward. I scheduled an appointment with my therapist, and I didn't want this to ruin my family. I truly did not want this to ruin my family. I wanted us to be able to work through this and to heal from this. And I think it was the next day that I went to my mom's house, and I told her that I had unrepressed a memory of my dad doing stuff to me when I was 2. And she was upset, and she was sad, and she was also confused, and she didn't know what was going on. But she looked at me and she said, well, we'll work through this. We'll get through this together. And I like found solace in that. I was like, okay, like we're going to figure this out. Like, and I wasn't even coming at any of this accusing him. I wasn't like, you did this to me. Like, I was like, I had this memory pop up. I'm going to go to therapy and figure this out. I need support. So it wasn't even like I came for anybody, you know. I was just trying to figure out what I was experiencing. And then obviously I was working for my dad. So I had called out the next day. I think I just texted him and told him I wasn't feeling good. And then the next day came, and I told him I wasn't feeling good. And then he called me, and he was like, what's going on? And I said, I unrepressed memories of being abused as a child. And he got dead quiet. It was like probably a good 15 seconds of pure silence. And the only thing that he said was, do you remember by who? And I said, no, not yet. And he said, okay, well, let me know when you're going to be able to come back to work. And I said, okay, I'll talk to you later. And he's like, okay, sounds good. Love you. Bye. I was like, love you. Bye. And that was how the phone call went. He ends that call. He's working with my big brother. He then turns to my big brother and says that I wanted to go to therapy with him. I hadn't said anything about therapy. He said that he turned to my big brother, said, River's mad at me and she wants to go to therapy. And never said anything about that. Went to my mom's house that day, or maybe it was the next day, asking my mom if she knew why I was mad at him. Basically starting to sow his seeds. And I didn't know any of this was happening. Like I said, I truly believed that he was going to go to therapy with me and we were going to work this out. So I think like a couple days went by, maybe it was like 2 days later, and my brother had contacted me to see what was going on and why I hadn't been at work. And I had told him very briefly that I was unrepressing these memories, and he obviously was distraught, but he didn't really have a lot to say. Mainly it was just that, like, you know, well, we need to talk to dad and see if this is really even happening. And like, you're probably like, I'm not really sure what that is, but it's not that, you know. And immediately like just did not believe me. And I just asked him to not tell my dad, that I would be able to have that conversation with him in person. And unfortunately, the next day at work, which I thought they had off, I thought that they were going to have a long period of time off. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told my big brother, because I wouldn't have expected him to keep that from my dad. But they did have work the next day. And so at that job, my brother ended up telling him that I had unrepressed that it was him. So I didn't know until later that night, after they had gotten home from work. I called my brother multiple times. I was like, "Did you tell him? Did you tell him?" Because I found out they had been working that day. And he was like, "Yeah, I did tell him," and he didn't do it. Like, he didn't do any of it. And I was just like, okay, ended the call. I was in such a state of shock because I knew what was happening. And I knew that in this moment, I was like, I was losing my family, that there was nothing that I could say that they were going to believe me or be able to support me through this. And so I was literally in the middle of drawing a bath. I had like a bath halfway up. My like ends of my hair were wet when my brother called me and told me that he had told my dad. And so I literally got out of the bath and I drove up to my dad's house. I called him, didn't answer, drove straight up to my dad's house. Called my mom, told her that I was on my way to my dad's house. And I pulled up and I go inside and I just walked in and he's sitting on his couch and he has a massive text message that he's typing to me, drafted. He's like actively typing on it. And I just sat down and I looked at him and I said, "I'm remembering these things happening." And he looked at me and he just said, "I've never touched a child in my life." And I said, "Well, then why am I remembering you doing this, this, and this?" And I gave him specific memories that I had remembered. And he went into like a state of shock and he just, all he could repeat over. Oh, but before that, he was like, "Well, maybe you're remembering stuff from past life. Maybe this is like, I don't know what you could have picked up on sexually because I never did this to you." And that was when I did give him specific memories that I started remembering. And he like kind of went like into a state of shock. And he was like, all he could say, and he kept repeating, was that "I've never touched a child in my life. I've never touched a child in my life." And I just looked at him and I said, "I know what I know." And I got up and I walked out. And as I walked out, I think I was just processing the reality that my dad was going to deny all of this, that he was not going to go to therapy with me, that this relationship that I had built with him was a lie, and that it was all completely fabricated on grooming and his shadows and deviancy and behaviors that he was trying to hide. And I was like kind of like the outlet for that. And everything just started clicking. All the conversations that we had that were just us, all the conversations that he would talk to me about. I mean, even before, like, I was probably like 8, 9, 10, 11, and he had told me about satanic ritual abuse. He told me about the satanic panic that happened in the 90s. He didn't talk to anybody else in my family about that. After all these things started coming out, I would go to my mom and I'd be like, "Did dad tell you this? Did dad tell you this? Did dad tell you this?" And she'd be like, she would act like I was making, I know she didn't mean to act like it, but they were such shocking things that were counterintuitive to what he would portray to other people, that he had been actively and openly telling me, especially over the 4 years that we had worked together, that I was like, I realized that I knew a different person than they knew. And that this person was going to deny that I ever knew that they were that person, and that I was going to lose my whole entire family. So I left his house, and as I was leaving his house, my mom pulled up and I got in her car and I just completely broke. I mean, I like went full like ugly scream sob. It was so much. And obviously I'm my whole entire world is crumbling. Like, no one would expect me to like keep it together in that sense, but I think it was a lot for my mom, and she just told me that I like really needed to rein it in, and like that, we needed to figure this out and it was going to be okay. And I was just like, I knew that no one was going to believe me. I just knew that no one was going to believe me, and that I didn't really know if I believed myself even. And so I got in my car and I watched as she walked up the steps to go into my dad's house, and they stared at me because I know that they were worried I was going to just literally crash slam my car into his truck as I was backing out. It was like everyone was gripping, like watching me just having this like massively unhinged moment, because I'm watching them. I know my dad's going to go in there and feed my mom a bunch of lies, just tell her everything that's not true, manipulate, gaslight, groom me. At this point, I realize now how dangerous he really was, like, but I didn't for a whole 27 years. And so now I realize like, oh, he's going to do what he's been doing my whole life. And it was just completely collapsing, and they were just like, she's on a psychotic break, she's going crazy, she's having these memories that are completely untrue, and she's gonna slam her car into his truck. I didn't. I wanted to. I will say that that was one of the most moments that I've had the strongest self-control I've ever had in my whole life. I just drove away. I just drove away and watched them walk upstairs, knowing that I was going to lose whatever family I had had in that moment forever, and that I was never going to get it back. And um haven't talked to my dad since then. Obviously, why would I? He hasn't reached out to say sorry. Rude of him. But I didn't talk to my big brother for a very long time. I reached out. He was unable to talk to me. He didn't believe me. I don't think he does believe me. I don't really know. It's obviously like a very sensitive family subject, right? Like no one wants to have to go through this, and no one wants to like have to digest it. So, and it's especially complicated because like my dad's getting old, and he's like, who's going to take care of that man in his old age? Somebody's got to do it. Like this family is we're all so sided, and it's so fragmented. But what's crazy now is like, I do see them. Like, you know, me and my brother didn't talk for a very long time, and then we ended up seeing each other when my mom got remarried. And so since then, like I will see him on holidays and, you know, for birthdays, and I get to see my nephew then and his wife. But for the most part, like it's still very fragmented, still very estranged. And I've had to work on things a lot with my mom in the very beginning. For the first 4 months, my mom was just like completely hands off, couldn't really help. She was able to help me financially because my dad was obviously my employer, and I had to try to find a job while I was unrepressing and readjusting to the fact that this was something that had really happened. And I kept trying to fight it, you know, and I was really lucky. I had a healing practitioner, and he had also experienced ritual abuse. And so he was able to help me navigate my unrepressed memories. He just kept saying, I believe you. I believe you. I believe you. Let these be believed. Let these be validated within you. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to let these be believed. And it was through that I was like, no, this really, really, really happened based off of what I've remembered, the way that he's reacted, the information that I've found. I mean, even down to like, I don't know how, if you get into it, like a lot of these are bloodlines, they're family, like satanic family bloodlines, down to like that echoing in my lineage. I'm definitely not the first Pitlick to go through satanic ritual abuse. Hopefully, I'm the last, but definitely not the first. And I don't know how good it is for me to go into those details because it's kind of a rabbit hole, but there's a lot more going on here than I think anybody really understood. And it goes a lot deeper, as it does, right? So like in a lot of these groups, and just like even in religions, we can talk about the LDS religion, there's an exotericism and an esotericism. Exo is like what you're going to get when you go and sit in the pew on a Sunday, and what they give to somebody that's not specifically a member. Anyone can have this information. You can pick up a Book of Mormon and read it. That's exo. That's what you believe on the external. And then there's something called the esoteric, which is like the internal world, which would be like the ceremonies that you're doing in the temples and the baptisms for the dead and covenants and things like that. Like that's the inner of the outer religion. And most religions, most institutions, most people operate like that. So I had been in the exoteric of my life, and this was me understanding the esoteric, if it makes sense. And it's layered. Externally it's layered, and internally it's really layered. And so it's very, there's a lot of like, you know, details. There's a lot of, the devil is in the details, you know. It's really layered, and they do that on purpose because it keeps things super secret, and it makes it hard to talk about it, and it makes it hard to put the puzzles together. I mean, look at how hard it is to prosecute any actual like world child sex trafficker like Epstein and Diddy, and these are just the fall men. These are just the freaking fall men. And so it's like, I have to remember that this is a lot bigger than me, and that I'm not the only one that's going through this, and that I'm not crazy. I am not crazy. So let's continue. It says, at first I didn't want to believe it, but I have been here before in myself time and time again when truth is presented to you internally, that you internally know to be true, but is the most difficult thing that could be happening in that moment. A little background about me that is important to know. So when I had left the LDS church when I was 19, I came out as queer a week after getting an 18-month-long mission call. Okay, crazy little note here, asterisk. Me coming out as queer is the only reason that I didn't go back into being a Satanist. Let it hit. Being being gay and liking women and leaving a Christian religion saved me from Satanism. And I've had multiple people say that to me. Multiple people that study these families, that study Satanism, that study these types of groups and child sex trafficking. They, like I said, they don't just break you, they don't just groom you, they don't just create you to only use you for a couple years. This is a system where they use people for their whole lives. There are people, they call it being compromised. There's like a lot of different words for it. You're still accessible to this group because they literally create parts of yourself that they can call on that only they know exist. This sounds crazy, but it's real. It's really happening. You can look at the Manchurian Candidate. You can look at trauma-based mind control. You can look at all of these different things, Operation Paperclip, all of these different things that talk about stuff like this. You could also look into the Japanese torture camps where they studied human experimentation, and they had it all over, especially in Southeast Asia. And they were actually killing camps. They were like the stuff that we talk about with, if you ever look into Joseph Mengele with World War II and Hitler, they had whole centers with men like that running it, doing experimentations on people. This is so unfortunate, but it's really what happened. And so they are able to still access you. And me being queer, me leaving the church and, you know, working through that is the only reason why I didn't get remarried, have kids, and provide my children to this group, which is absolutely nuck and fuds, right? That's crazy. And it, you know, what's even crazier too is since I've come out, or not come out, but since I've unrepressed memories, I'm so much more in the middle when it comes to my sexuality. Like, I love women, but I also love dating men too. And before, it was a lot more staunch, like, oh, I am a lesbian. I only like women. I only want to date women. And now that I've unrepressed my memories, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm pretty bisexual, I think. Like, I like both. And that's been a journey. And I think that it was a blessing. I think it was me liking women, only women for that point of time, literally kept me from having children that I sacrificed into a satanic cult. So let's move on. Okay, it says, let's see, came out as queer after an 18-month-long mission call. A few years later, I began my mental health journey in 2018, initially seeking therapy, thinking I had bipolar. I was diagnosed with delayed onset PTSD from a few sexual assaults that happened in my early adult life, separate to my childhood abuse. Between 2018 to 2020, I dedicated myself to learning coping skills, going to talk/EMDR therapy, along with implementing self-help that resonated with me. Through that, it led me to discovering that the healing I needed was deeper than what therapy had given me. I went through a spiritual awakening, launching me an intuition I always knew was there but dismissed. As I followed in the urge to grow my gifting, I wound up working and living under a shaman. I'll refrain from giving too many details, as the shaman and I were in an agreement about the lessons they would teach me before this life. Through this experience, though, I began understanding what quote-unquote black magic was. The shaman was dealing with shadows of theirs that they knowingly and unknowingly bled onto me, leading me to experience banishment, learning about dark occultism and how quote-unquote magic is manipulated. I jokingly say that I fled away in terror from their land after confronting them, which is partially true. I did confront them, but believe their intentions to be mainly good and more wounded than evil. Most importantly, though, when moving back to the city, I couldn't help but see black magic everywhere. In the news, socials, politicians, religions, and other spiritual leaders. During my time under the shaman, I started offering psychic readings and energy healing, something I pursued for the next 3 years after leaving. I stopped taking clients at the beginning of 2024, feeling like I needed to reset and find a new way to bring whatever help I have to offer to the table, allowing me to focus on healing and growing other tools I could use to help hold more love in the collective. Okay, so the shaman, the black magic. I don't really feel like I need to talk a lot about that. I feel like that's kind of self-explanatory. I'll just keep reading. It says, I mainly refer to black magic now as subconscious abuse. As I've grown into my understanding and research, there has been much evidence of subliminal influences deeply affecting whole societies. The subconscious mind and the control thereof has been studied by countless governments, private organizations, and it's information that is harder to come by and verify, mainly because it's still used and practiced in many different ways and places. We've seen whole countries be brainwashed due to propaganda and conditioning. We'd be foolish to believe we are immune to this being present in our reality as well, or our politics. Not going to go into that. Ritual abuse is deemed such because it always involves torture. Fun. Some forms of extreme terror, conditioned terror, giving the abuser the ability to split the individual's brain into personality fragments, creating what some have diagnosed as multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. Also related to or the same as trauma-based mind control. During the torture, that it's not funny. I'm laughing at my journey in uncovering my DID. Okay, so that's what I'm laughing at. It's not that any of this is funny. It's that I've gone through it and I've been like, this is how it starts. So you're like, I'm having this memory, but do I have multiple? Do I have DID? And then like 6 months in, you're like, oh, I've been operating with DID, just unaware that I had DID this whole time. And then it's also like, oh, and it wasn't just ages 2 to 5. And oh, it wasn't just these people. And it all unravels. So I'm laughing at how you just, it takes so long. Like you can read all of these things on a paper, but for an individual that's going through this to actually apply it to themselves and to like realize that like nobody is literally the exception, unfortunately. Like if they did this to you, it was not just casually, and that you're probably not, like I said, the exception to what's happening. Anyway, so let's see. Am I specific? Okay, lovely. I don't want to read that. See, this is where it gets hard. I hate the memory part of it. It just gets so yucky. But it says, let's see, giving the abusers the power to be the only ones who are able to access the specific fragment of the brain. Without these, the personality stays locked away. If the personality is triggered on its own and starts confessing, it is trained to kill the individual remembering what happened. That's called suicide programming. In my specific case, my other self was dedicated to a specific demonic deity. The demonic deity was associated with lust and sex. They do this to further align the individual with their intended purpose as well as receive otherworldly quote unquote help. They use occultism practices to bind victims to or in specific energetic areas of the body to keep them from several things. I found many binds in my mouth, throat, feet, hands, etc. The more I remember, the more the binds appear and allow them to be removed. But only by facing and sitting with the darkness presented am I able to release them. Facing that darkness for me looks different almost every time, but one thing remains consistent. I have to protect myself from something inside myself that will come out and try to get me to stop no matter the cost. The most consistent thing that happens when I regress is my head starts slamming repeatedly on a surface until I stop regressing. Many times I slam my head so hard that I lose hearing and begin to black out, having absolutely no control over my body and fully knowing if I had something more lethal, I would not still be here. I do not want to die. If an apparent suicide happens after I come forward, it is not from me or any personality inside of me. Still applicable. I've been dealing with this for 2 years and have more help now than I have had the whole time. I'm finally making more sense of the experiences I went through and I'm finding rapid healing for those. I have had to implement every single tool I've learned through therapy, coping skills, self-help books, spiritual books, shamans, healers, and support from other people. I know without the healing work and coping skills I had grown by the time I started remembering that I would have not been able to make it through the hell I have walked. I believe integration and undoing these programs is possible and will become easier the more survivors that intuitively and informatively continue to heal. Okay, couple things. I'm so much better now. I'm so much better now. Thank goodness. I'll still have suicide programming come up, but literally just last night, I unrepressed 4 to 5 memories. It was like 4.5 memories. And the last one was very detailed. I'm fine. Look at me talking to you guys today. I'm not fine. You just get better at it. I'm not having suicidal programming come up nearly like it used to. Like literally before I posted this Substack article, I had to call up one of my practitioners that I work with and I was like, "Can you please help me because I'm convinced somewhere inside myself that if I post this article people will die." I had like a full-blown like meditative vision of people being attached to me from the group still and that it like if anybody from the group speaks then all these people are gonna die, and I like had to go in and be like, I really thought it was real. Like I will catch myself in programming where I'm like, if I do this though they might come after me, and I'm like, girl, it's 2025, we're alive, we're breathing. And but then it does get a little bit scary sometimes because since I have posted this, since I have come out publicly with my Substack article, I have been sued, which I have never, ever, ever, ever been sued in my whole life. People will say it's separate from this, and on the surface it is, but we can connect it back. We there's always a connection back. And I also have been stalked. So by a person that I went on 2 dates with, and they got crazy. So, and also, this is where it gets a little bit more hard to understand, but they have things called handlers. Like if like they everyone when they put you in this group, they assign you a specific type of role, and one of the roles that you can be, it's usually men, is they'll be handlers, which is on the outside world. On the external world, on the exoteric, they are supposed to take care of the merchandise, the products, which is the people being trafficked. And I ran into, like, when you're online dating, you just kind of swipe with whoever. I was on a date with a guy, and my birth name is Emily. I go by River. No one calls me Emily anymore besides people that knew me like years and years and years and years ago. But he called me Emily. And I was like, what did you just call me? I was so freaked out. And shit like that will happen where I'm like, I know that there are people that are being sent to me from these organizations, from these groups, that are either handlers or they're trying to get information. Just really weird, really random people at the grocery store that will just start talking to me about ritual abuse when I've literally never had that happen in my whole entire life. And it's not because they recognize me. It's not because I'm like out here as some sort of RSA influencer. Like, it's just one-off people that like know me, and it's freaking creepy, but it's real. And this happens to a lot of survivors when they start coming out. Like, I've talked to a lot of survivors that will have like this one specific story, they had a general authority's son show up on their door, and just like want to talk, want to hang out. I know I sound crazy in saying this, but if you talk to a bunch of other survivors, we all experience the same exact weird anomalies, and they're just meant to keep us quiet, right? So I don't know. I don't think that like someone's just going to show up and like try to assassinate me. I don't think that there's any part of myself that will ever actually be able to overpower me to get me to unalive myself. But there's weird shit that happens for sure. There's a lot of weird shit that happens. Okay, let's see. What's next? My memories can take days and sometimes weeks to finally. Oh, this is me going into detail of my blood baptism. Okay, I don't feel like it's productive. I just don't feel like it's productive for me to sit here, like I said, and share memories. You can go online and read that. And it was basically just like a man in a robe with a goat, and he did a sacrifice with the goat and used the goat and used himself to continue to abuse me. I don't feel like going into those types of details is like very productive for my body or for the audience. So we're just gonna like I said, maybe I'll talk about it, but I will make a bit out of it. You guys like might just pop up here in like a red hooded cloak and make a joke. Just kidding. I would never. But like it would be funny. There's no place that I won't take the bit. It will be inappropriate every time. Because this is inappropriate. All of this is inappropriate. So I'm going to make inappropriate jokes about it. Okay. Okay, let's see. What's next? Oh, I had heard of ritual abuse. In fact, my dad had talked to me about it at a very early age, like I said earlier, telling me of the hypnosis scandal that happened and the satanic panic in the LDS church in the early 90s. He always told me it was absolutely crazy. This is one of many things he would bring up as I grew up. I always thought I was just really close with my dad, that I was his confidant. I didn't realize until after coming forward that I was the only one in the family he was having conversations like that with. Boo. When I came forward about the abuse from my father, most of my family ghosted me. Rock on. If they read this, it'll probably be the first time they're hearing about my ritualistic abuse, making it that much more unbelievable, inconceivable, deniable. Unfortunately, this reality is all too common for survivors of this abuse. Losing whole families, being shunned, called crazy, and invalidated. It's so much easier to deny the survivors than to face the reality of the horrors that aren't just happening on billionaire islands and in Hollywood, but in our own backyards. Ritual abuse may have been something that was reserved for elite, high-power people, but it has trickled down into the lower levels of society, into organizations inside of organizations that seem innocent on the surface, and people who appear to be living normal lives. As if survivors are not battling their own programming enough, we have to battle against a system that has groomed everyone into not believing us. I struggled finding any type of information or resources on what I was remembering. Finally, I found what is known as the Glenn L. Pace memo, giving me validation for the things I was remembering. This moment was truly healing, but also horrifying. If you haven't read the Glenn L. Pace memo, go for it. It's a really interesting document. It was released by a member of the LDS Church. I think he was a bishop. But he was tasked with talking to a ton of survivors of ritualistic sexual abuse, and he was able to say that there was like 12 or 13 groups just right along the Wasatch Front, which is where I grew up, Sandy, Utah, right by the Wasatch Front, of these men that were doing these things. And all of the survivor stories were very coherent and very in line with the other survivor stories. It's like they have a guidebook that they all follow. There's some sort of like rules that they abide by, right? So the experiences of the survivors will all be somewhat dovetailed together. And then this says, I for the last 2 years have kept waiting to finally be proven crazy. At times, I so wish I could blame all of this on delusions, a mental illness of some kind, but I have found others. I have found documents, I have found cover-ups, I have found hundreds of years of humans speaking on matters like this. I am not the first one, and I will not be the last one. In the last year, I've remembered forms of torture, abuse, human and animal sacrifice, and cannibalism. I plan on sharing more of my story along with others who wish to come forward on my podcast, Deconstructing Darkness, what you're listening to right now. I'm working with another survivor of RSA, Jennifer Guskin. She was adopted into a family in New York where she was trafficked to many government officials, witnessed blackmail, visited Epstein Island, among many other horrific child sex trafficking scandals. Together, we are starting a support group for survivors of RSA and child sex trafficking, a resource I so desperately needed in the last 10 years and still needed, in the last 2 years and still needed and haven't been able to find. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, if you want to help, talk about it. Talk about it so much that any survivors in your life know you will believe them. Talk about it so much that others who didn't know it existed start looking into it. Talk about it on your socials, in your circles, and at your work. As Jennifer told me, if everyone is talking about something, the media will be forced to start reporting on it. And to the survivors, I see you, I hear you, I love you, your soul is not gone, and I believe you. If you are a survivor or have an inquiry about the group, please reach out to me or Jennifer. I'll include both our names. If you want to follow along and support, my socials are below. Okay, so that group never really even manifested. Jennifer lives she lives on the East Coast, and so that I think we're still on good terms. We still talk occasionally, but we honestly aren't very close, and the support group never super gelled. We never really had a bunch of people that were trying to join, but I was able to. Back in February, there's a podcast called We Are the People, and they're covering a lot of ritualistic sexual abuse stuff right now too, and they held a rally actually for RSA survivors to raise awareness and to bring community together for us. And prior to that, I had connected with quite a few people online, but I met up with some of them in person, and it was really, really good. And through those supports, there's more of a community, more of a support group now online. So if anybody is interested in joining one, there is lots of networks, lots of communities, lots of help that I've been able to find. And they were hard to find, though. And I think the other thing too that's really, really hard about finding support for these things is they are almost always Christian based. And I'm not knocking that, but I am saying that for some survivors, it is way more damaging to force using Jesus or to advise or to say that using Jesus for their healing will provide them better results, or it will get them more healed quicker, or that those who bring Jesus into their lives see greater blessings and find healing faster than those that don't. I think that is super damaging to say to people that have experienced satanic ritual abuse. So I'm here saying that you don't need that. That's what my voice is in all of this. I'm not going to use this as an agenda to push my spiritual beliefs and say, oh, there's a Satan out here, so we need to believe in a Christ and a God. And there are really, really, really wicked people. There is some sort of darkness that is out of balance on this earth right now. What that darkness is, whether you want to believe it's satanic or the devil, or it's from a Christian base, or you want to believe that it's high power, high money, elite people, or you want to believe that it's Anunnaki aliens or whatever, there is some sort of dark force that is here that is, I believe, harvesting the energy, and that's why it's so systematic, right? I think that there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that it takes a lot to explain and to get into, and hopefully we have time for all of that at some time, if it's right to talk about those things. But I am not going to sit here and say that you need to heal yourself in a specific modality or a specific religion, and that Jesus is the salving, cooling cream to the burn that is satanic ritual abuse, because I think that our bodies were the ones that went through that abuse. They were able to split the survivors' brains, right? Sometimes when they split the soul, the person dies. A lot of children don't make it out of ritualistic or satanic abuse because it's so hard on your body that it literally shuts down. This happens. So the people that survived what happened to us, that actually split, our bodies could not disassociate. Our brains split, we disassociated, we left our bodies, but our bodies literally sat there and endured every single ounce of this torture and this abuse. So it's in our bodies. It's not necessarily that there's going to be some entity that comes out and helps healing us in those things and can put their hands on us and just take it away. It's something that we're going to have to hold space to be let go of inside of ourselves, and to do that in healthy ways that our programming isn't going to get triggered and that we can stay alive through. So that's really what I think I want to hold space for in this podcast and to talk about. I know lots of other survivors. I think that there are probably more survivors like me than there are survivors that are still Christian. I think there are probably more survivors that are queer and that are woo woo or spiritual or not or agnostic or atheist than there are survivors that stayed, whether it was like, because like this is in the Catholic Church, this is in the LDS Church, this is in, this is all over, all over. And so whether it's like, a Catholic or a Christian or a Epstein survivor, it's all the same type of thing. And I don't think that one like ideology is going to fix it all. But that's just my opinion on it. And anyway, that was kind of a heavy episode, but I did it. We did it together. Good job. It's 11:11 on my clock right now. That's great. I'm not really sure how to close this out. I think that this is just what it is. And if you guys have any questions, seriously, that's another thing about this podcast. You can ask me anything. You can say, I'm having a really hard time understanding this. Can you give me some resources to deep dive this more? And I might do that. I'm happy to do that. But I think too, if you have questions, do your own research. If you have questions, Google your own shit. Like, go on to Reddit. There's so much shit on Reddit. There's so much shit on X. Like, there's a lot of documents that you can find that are just kind of obscure and might be hidden. That TikTok even just finding other people that are talking about these things. They'll drop hints. I think I dropped a couple in here that you could go and Google. And I think too, there's some hesitancy for people to share, like if you're trying to grow a platform, these things, because you can get shut down. They can what is it, shadow ban you? I don't know what the word is, but not push your content out to people to see it. So anyway, that's another reason why I'm not necessarily wanting to do whole episodes on like the conspiracy theories, because I would rather not get flagged. But you should do your own research. If you're curious, you should look into this. You should try to find some stuff on it. And yeah, I hope that I'll be back here soon. I have guests that definitely want to come on that also want to share their stories. So I appreciate you sitting here with me for this last little bit, and I'll see you on the next one.